start. So we've had this Zoom webinar today, this Zoom meeting for migrants. I'm going to speak in English because we have people from different countries, people who speak different languages. I know there are some people from Zimbabwe, some from Nigeria, some from Kenya, who find themselves all in similar situations. So I will speak in English. It's my second language, but Shona is my first language. So if I slip into Shona at sometimes, please excuse me. So we have something that is happening in our community since the end of last year, which feels like a wave, which feels like a wind is coming through of uncertainty, and there's a lot of fear around sponsorship licenses and suspensions of sponsors from the register of sponsors that the Home Office has. And this is causing a lot of fear, uncertainty, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of sleepless nights on parts of people who are working as carers, and also on the part of sponsors and employers who are sponsoring migrant workers. So this webinar is in response to many questions that we have. Tulia is an organization that is frontline, and we provide legal advice and holistic support for migrants. So recently, most of our questions are coming around, my sponsor's license has been suspended, or I've seen on the update that they've come off the register, but we don't know what is happening. So today's webinar is geared towards the workers more than towards the sponsors. So as Tulia, we work with both. We work with employers to support them in compliance, and then we also work with the migrants, the workers who are working. So we work with both parties. But today's webinar is mostly geared towards the people who are working, and what is this, what does this mean for them? What does it mean for dependents? What does it mean for their future? So I'm going to try and explain it as simply as I can, and then we will have time for questions. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And if you don't feel comfortable asking your question openly, you are free to send it to myself or to Tulia, the co-host, and we will answer your questions for you. So I think the first thing is, what does suspension mean? So when you see, like, there's a link that people show every day, 50 sponsors have had their names removed off the register, 20 today, etc. My sponsor is no longer on the register. What does that mean? So usually suspension is different all the time. Actually, it's different from revocation. So suspension is a pause. It's a pause. It's a pause for the sponsor. So if the Home Office, who is the regulator of this, they are the government body that deals with immigration, if they feel that a sponsor is breaching their duties as a sponsor, or if they believe that the sponsor is posing a threat to immigration control, or that the sponsor is engaging in behavior or actions which are not conducive to the public good, they may suspend the license whilst they make further inquiries. So if the Home Office is suspicious, if they're suspicious that there's something going on which we are not sure about, if they're suspicious that there's too many people who are coming into the UK from a particular sponsor, and they are worried that this looks like a very small business and they've brought in hundreds and hundreds of people. Are these people really working? So they'll start to think this is a threat. This is a threat to the control of the UK borders. This is a threat. So what they can do is say, we're just stopping you for now and we are investigating. So during that time when they suspend, so suspension is as it means, is suspension. So like they're holding and saying, just wait. We want to look into this further. And during that time, the sponsor will not be able to assign certificates of sponsorship. So they will not be able to assign new certificates of sponsorship whilst the license is suspended. They'll still be able to employ the people who they have. They'll still be able to have the staff who are sponsored, who are here, but they won't be able to assign any new COSs. And if the license is suspended, their names will be removed from the list of sponsors during that time whilst it is suspended. So it will be removed, the name will be removed from the list. So they won't appear on the public register of sponsors. So the workers, this is to address the workers who are being sponsored at the time of suspension and who have valid permission to stay and valid permission to enter. They will not be affected unless and until the Home Office decides to revoke the license. So there is when there is an initial suspension, the workers are allowed to continue to work. So if your sponsor's license has been suspended, it doesn't mean that you cannot continue to work. So you can continue to work. If you've applied for visas for your dependents, they can continue to come and they will not be stopped from entering the UK. But if the Home Office decide to revoke the license, then that is a different issue. And they will write to your employer and tell them that we have decided to revoke the license. But what I want to talk about quickly before I answer all of the questions so that I address concerns is how does the Home Office decide whether to suspend a license or not? When does this happen? What will happen after they do it? And what does it exactly mean? So there's quite a lot of circumstances where the Home Office can decide to suspend a license. If they feel that there's inadequate, if they feel that they're not genuine vacancies, where an employer does not have genuine vacancies. One of the things that we've seen over the last couple of months and years is that there's been companies who have started up with the intention of bringing people in. And there's been an issue of people coming in with a certificate of sponsorship that doesn't really have a job. And they come in with the intention that I know this is what's happening. So I'll talk about those type of people as well. And they are aware of it. So it's sort of a commodity that they've bought, and they've bought this certificate of sponsorship and they've come into the UK. And there are companies who have been doing this with many, many people, but there's no record of these people working. They're not paying income tax. They're not actually working. This company doesn't have hours. And so where the Home Office sees that, they then think, what's going on here? So we're going to investigate further. So those are some of the reasons they can suspend. When a company is asking for more certificates of sponsorship, even to extend leave to remain for people, to assign more COSs, the Home Office can ask questions. And if a sponsor is unable to answer those questions or to prove that they have adequate contract, they've got work, at that point, the Home Office can suspend because they're not satisfied with the answers to the question, and they've started asking a lot of questions. So they've, when people are applying for new certificates of sponsorship, there comes a letter with a lot of questions. So for sponsors who may be on the call, when you get those type of questions, don't take it simply, and really answer them thoroughly, and prove why you need those workers. So because that in itself can be a trigger. The trigger can come where someone is stopped at Heathrow, Manchester, Birmingham Airport. They ask questions and they answer and say things which cause suspicion. Again, that can be another trigger. It can be just a routine visit. It can also be because of intelligence or because of complaints, where a disgruntled employee leaves and then they say, yeah, I'm going to bring everyone down. No, we are going down together, because people can have that type of spirit that I'm going to bring everyone down. So at that point, it can trigger suspension because they've had information from the CQC, where they've got concerns about how the business is being managed and this work, what is happening in that organization. It can also be triggered at the point of renewal. It can also be triggered just at routine. So there's no formula and there's no reason. There's no, it can happen to anyone. It can happen as a suspension or a compliance visit can happen at any point and to any provider. And the important thing is the process after the suspension. They want you to provide evidence. So they'll give your employers, the opportunity to provide evidence. So I've seen on social media people saying, my sponsor, the license has been suspended. And they're asking me to produce my bank statement. Why on earth is my employer wanting my bank statement? Because the Home Office wants it. So the Home Office will say, sometimes we want to see bank statements, pay slips. They ask for a whole long list of things, and they want your employer to cooperate with them. Monica has just put in the chat that I can't hear the sound. Is that only Monica, or is there anyone else? Because it may be a problem with you, Monica. So please, can someone tell me whether I'm speaking to myself or you can hear me? Good. Okay, Monica, I think it's on your end. So you need to sort out your microphone. So yeah, I will continue on. Thank you. So the Home Office wants evidence that justifies why the license should continue. So they want the Home Office, want the employer to produce evidence, but that needs cooperation. So I've seen that people, when they ask these questions and people come onto social media and they say, don't give them. Guys, this is not a them versus us. We're in this together. So where your employer asks for you to cooperate and produce your bank statements, produce them, because it's in your interest for the company to maintain their license. It's not that if the company loses their license, it's not them who are only going to suffer. It's everyone. So cooperation is important, to cooperate with the Home Office, because they want you to produce the information for their investigation. And so they give the sponsors they give them the opportunity to produce evidence. They produce they give the opportunity for them to produce evidence to justify why. So it's not a case of once there's been a suspension, it's doom and gloom, Jatopera, it's finished. No. And I think that's one of the key messages that I want to bring out, because people are giving misinformation. Everyone is now an immigration advisor. Everyone is spreading fear. Everyone on TikTok, because it's content. But through that content, it's misinformation and causing fear and causing panic among people, which is not right. Because when a license is suspended, it might get revoked. Yes, it might get revoked. And that is a possibility. But it might not. So you need to know, okay, have I been going to work? So if you know that you've been going to work, things are smooth, you know, your employer is not doing dodgy dealings, then there can be a grounds for your sponsor to maintain their license. But obviously, if you know that you've never even gone to the premises, you've never worked a day in your life, you've never been paid, then you know what the end result is going to be. Their license will get revoked. So you also, you know what's happening. So try and look at your own situation. Okay, my company, are we safe? Have we been going to work? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to come to the questions. I can see them coming thick and fast, so I will definitely answer them in about 5 minutes. So after the 20 days, the sponsor responds, the Home Office can then make a decision. 3 things can happen. They can maintain the license. They can maintain it. Yeah. So they can say, we're putting you back on to the register. We've investigated. There's nothing that you're doing that's wrong. And that has happened to a lot of employers, because some people are malicious. They go and make false allegations, or they create stories. People are jealous of each other. They go and lie, or there was just something that they were not sure about, or it's a minor breach. So all of those, it depends on what's happening, isn't it? Each individual case is different, so it can come back. Then the next one is the license can be revoked, which means the Home Office is saying you are no longer able to employ migrant workers. No more. We're taking you off the register. Your employees cannot work for you anymore. Full stop. But they give you a cooling off period of 12 months. Then you can reapply if you want to reapply for a license. So it's not also just the end completely. And then they can downgrade and say, we're putting you to a downgrade, a B. You're not allowed to sponsor any new people. Let's maintain the ones you have. And from there, you do what's called an action plan. And an action plan allows you to to work on certain things as an employer. So the action plan allows you to work on certain things as an employer. So that's the process. It takes a while because the investigations can take even up to 6 months. The investigations can take a long time. So that is what the Home Office will do. That's the type of process that's there. So suspension does not mean the end, and it just depends on the situation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the questions, because there's a lot of questions and I think it's important to respond to those. So I'm scrolling right up to the question so that I don't miss anyone out and answer all of the questions that are there. Perfect. So if I miss any, please can you just let me know, Team Tulia. Thank you. So I've got a question here from Batrai, which says, please can you address that part that says you don't have a right to appeal this decision on the 60-day letters? Okay, let's talk about the 60-day letters. So what will happen is, if your sponsor's license is revoked, then the Home Office, they will write to you, and they will write you a letter saying you've got 60 days within which to either switch to another employer, apply for leave to remain in a different category, or leave the UK. And that decision to cancel your leave to remain, because you would have leave to remain for 3 years. So there's a decision that's taken to cancel it. So you can't appeal that decision, because it may be because your employer has had their license suspended, or it may be because you've been fired, you've been let go, or because you've resigned and you are no longer working. So you don't have a right to appeal against that decision. So that's what that means, that you don't have a right to appeal. And Alison was asking if the Home Office have stopped completely giving COSs. They haven't stopped giving COSs, but they are asking more questions. They're scrutinizing requests for them. There's delays in getting them. And in some cases, they're saying to organizations, no, we're not giving you any more at this time because the people that you've got are enough. So they're scrutinizing, but they're not refusing. If they're satisfied, like with what you're doing, they will give COSs. They're not refusing. And are they still going to give? They may be able to still, if you have an employer who is employing you and you're from Zimbabwe, it's not that you're bad and they're not going to give people from Zimbabwe. The problems which are happening in this country are not limited to people from Zimbabwe. The problems which are happening with this sponsorship system are across the whole world. People from Zimbabwe, people from India, people from Bangladesh, people from Malawi, people from Kenya, people from Cameroon, people from Philippines have all come on this visa. Employers have employed from all over the world. So it's not like there is a blacklist on us as Zimbabweans. It's because as Zimbabweans, maybe we talk about it in our community and it feels like as Zimbabweans, you're the only ones. But this is a problem across. So they haven't said, oh, we're not going to have Zimbabweans. No. And I think we see it magnified because it's affecting the people around us. And we may feel that it's only Zimbabweans who are targeted and they're never going to allow Zimbabweans. That's not true. Yeah. So somebody has asked about our staff are about to renew their visas in the next 6 months. Do we need to apply for COS again, or they can just apply to renew their own? So you do have to, as an employer, if your staff's visas are about to expire, so if they were on like for 1 year, yes, you have to apply for a new COS for them, and then they can renew their visas with a new certificate of sponsorship. And that's one of the biggest problems that we are seeing is some employers are not being given new allocations. Some are suspended, so they cannot give a new COS during the time of suspension. So although you are able to continue working for your employer, if their license is suspended and your visa expires, then it's not automatic and they can't give you a new COS because they can't access the system to assign a new COS. So they are locked out in the sense of they can't give new COSs in their system. So that is a big problem for people whose visas are expiring whilst the investigation is going on. So those people, if your visa is expiring, mark this. I think just that's important for you to know as an individual when your visa is expiring for yourself, because you have to now take responsibility for your own future. And look, if you know, and you need to speak to HR in advance, speak to your company 3 months before your visa is expiring to say, my visa is expiring in 3 months. I was given a certificate of sponsorship for 1 year or 2 years. It's expiring. I need a new COS. Please confirm to me whether you're going to be able to give it to me so that I can extend my visa. If your employer says we are suspended or we cannot, or you see that they're stepping, and you're not sure what's happening, the communication is not clear, then you need to look for another job and start looking at your options and start getting advice about your situation. So that's something that is so important, that you need to take authority over your own life, and you need to understand as a worker that my visa is limited. My visa is for 1 year. So if it's coming up to the end of that year, what am I going to do? And speak to your employer, just ask them that what is going to happen? Are you in a position to offer me an extension? Can you do it? And if they cannot, or if their name is on that list that circulates, and you know that their license has been suspended, then you need to start looking at your options, looking for a new employer, looking at what other routes you can use to apply for a an extension. So that is very, very, very important. Very important, because those are people who are in a precarious situation. It's a dangerous situation, because if your employer had promised you that we're going to keep you, but their license gets suspended, then you don't have a certificate of sponsorship to extend your visa. So your visa is dependent on the certificate of sponsorship. So for people in that position, please get advice and see what you can do. Right. Okay. So I'm going to go on. Somebody asked me as a direct message that in the event that a license is suspended, can you travel maybe to Africa? I would say to you guys, and I'm gonna just say this with all my, please don't cancel these travel arrangements when things are uncertain like this. You know, when there's a storm, because this is essentially a storm in our migrant communities. Holidays, please cancel. You know, don't start traveling up and down when you know your sponsor's license was 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 is suspended, because it can be reinstated or it can be revoked. If it's revoked while you're out there, you may not have the 60-day letter, but you could be the unfortunate one that gets a 60-day letter quickly whilst you're outside the country. And if the 60 days letter comes to you and you're not in the UK, automatically you can't come back in, because it's automatic that when you're outside, you cannot come back in. So that is important, because anything can happen. And I think the time that you have in this country, take every day as I need to. If you know your sponsor's license has been suspended, then start looking for jobs, start looking for work, start looking at your options, save your money, because you're coming into a time where it's uncertain. And so traveling, from just a pragmatic and practical perspective, I wouldn't advise traveling when the ship is rocky like this. It's a time to stop and focus. If you want to stay in this country, then you need to ensure that you are doing what you can do to protect your future. So traveling is wasting time, wasting resources, unless you have to. Like if it's a funeral or something, I'm not just making generic statements, but what I'm saying is you don't have time. And if you're going to wait for that 60-day letter, or you're going to wait for the outcome, you can then end up in a situation where you are very vulnerable. Thank you so much for that, Tawanda, that your company's license was reinstated. And that is the reality, that a lot of companies' licenses get reinstated. People go on to an action plan. So it's not all doom and gloom. Suspension does not mean revocation. It's two different things. And I think the word that's going out is vatorerwa. It's gone, and it's causing so much panic. The Home Office can also revoke a license straight away without suspension. So that is, again, something different. But where you know that a license has been suspended, it's different. Yeah. So yes, thank you for that question, Kawara. That we applied for visas 5 days before company went on to suspension, and now it's a month. The visas are not out. What does that mean? It means the Home Office is holding on to it. So what the Home Office says is, if you've applied on the guidance, if you've applied for a visa, if you've applied for indefinite leave to remain, and the company has supported you, or who's sponsoring you, they will hold on to decisions that they make to see whether or not they're going to reinstate the license, whether they're going to revoke the license. So any decisions that are pending, if you've made an application that's supported by a valid COS, and then that was assigned before the license was suspended, the Home Office have said in their guidance that we will not decide the application until the reason for the suspension has been resolved, unless the application falls for refusal on other grounds. So where your application is going to be successful, but the license has been suspended, the Home Office will hold on to that. So people who've made entry clearance applications, people who are switching, people who've made applications for indefinite leave to remain, the application will be on hold. So Kawara, thanks for that question. Yeah, so that is the Home Office have said we will we will hold on to that. If then the license gets revoked, then the visa will be refused. But if another scenario similar to what Karawa has asked, that if you've already been granted entry clearance, and then the license is revoked, then your visa as well is cancelled, and you may not be able to then enter the UK when you come in, and so employees are always encouraged to check the status of their sponsor's license before they travel. So yeah, that is something that can happen. What if the employer is nowhere to be found? What happens to the employees? So if they've gone AWOL, then you know again what's coming, isn't it? So if your employer is nowhere to be found, then you need to look for jobs, look at your options, and ensure that you're able to switch, to look for a new employer, and to get advice on your situation, because it's only a matter of time before the Home Office catch up with them and then they revoke the license. Because if you can't find them and they're missing and they're not providing you work, they're not doing what they said they would do. So it's inevitable that that's what's going to happen. So that is, if they're nowhere to be found, then it is, it's exactly what it means, that you don't have an employer. And so your visa is in a very dangerous situation. So you need to look for a switch, look for other options as to how you can regularize your status to stay in the UK. Those who brought me in the UK, but I've not worked for them. So you can't produce anything. So I'm not saying I said if your employers are asking you for bank statements, right? Which show the pay going in. So if you have been working and you've been getting paid every month, then cooperate with them and give them the bank statements. But like Lorraine, you've asked, you haven't worked for them. You can't produce any pay slips and you can't produce any bank statements. So those are the employers who are at risk. And that's why we're seeing so many on a daily basis, so many suspensions, because there are employers who have brought people in and have not given them any work. And so there's no evidence that they are working. So again, for people who are in that situation, you need to be able to you need to be looking for a genuine employment. You need to work because you were tricked into coming here, or there's two types of people. There's those who are complicit, so who knew what they were doing and they knew that there was no job. Then there are those who are innocent, who were tricked and offered employment, but when they came here, there is no employment. There are those who were trafficked here for other things. So they may have come under the sponsorship scheme, but they're not actually coming here to work in the sector that they're supposed to be working. They are victims of human trafficking. Some are victims of modern day slavery. Some people come here thinking they're coming to work as a carer, but they're actually being trafficked for sexual purposes, to come and work as sex workers, or to come and work as domestic workers, or to come and work in factories, farming cannabis, so there's so many things that happen. So where you have come and it's not you're not doing what you were supposed to be doing, there are a lot of organizations that help, and you need to get the help individually according to your circumstances. If you are a victim of human trafficking, of modern day slavery, there is help available for you, and we do referrals to the Salvation Army, to many organizations that support people who are specialists in modern day slavery and human trafficking. So each situation is different, and we will share links in the chat as well for you to be able to get the help that you need. There is another question about how long does the suspension take, or how long does it take to get the answer? It just depends on how long the investigations take. So initially, they'll give 20 days to the employer to send information. It takes a long time to collate the information, to collect it, to sift through it, to send it to the Home Office. So sometimes you can even ask for an extension, but it's important to cooperate with the Home Office and to rectify any places where you can see that maybe we've made some mistakes. So the Home Office accepts it that where you've made mistakes, you can rectify on record keeping, on things like that. So an employer who is responding, it can take more than 20 days, but you can ask for an extension. If an employer has received that letter, please don't try and do it by yourself. Get legal advice. Get legal advice, because what you send to them is what will form the next action. So now when they get that letter, they will take more action and ask more questions. So they will take the information you've given them, they'll analyze it, and then they'll come back with more questions, or they'll take that information and revoke, or they'll take that information and say we're satisfied with it. So the process is, it can take even a year, it can take 6 months, it can take 12 weeks. It does that. I don't know, like, it's for each person, it's different. Yeah. Yokai asked about, she's switched, but her dependents haven't, and the employer's license has been cancelled. So your dependents are still valid because their visa is linked to your visa. So I'll actually, let me read out your question. Yokai, thank you for that. You said, I have switched, but my dependents came on a previous COS and haven't switched yet. But now the previous employer's license has been cancelled. Does this mean that my dependents have to pay for new visas on my new COS, or are they safe because their visas are still valid? What do I do? So the answer to you, Yokai, is that your dependents, they don't have to switch their visas, because as long as yours is valid, then theirs are linked to you more than linked to the sponsor. So you are their sponsor and you have your sponsor. So when you switch, you get a new visa. But as long as your dependent's visa is still valid, they don't have to. So I hope that's clear for you. I think Samsung question is the same as the one that I've just answered, so that's okay. Somebody, Arnold, has asked, how do I know if the license has been suspended? So usually your employers will tell you, but they may not, and they don't really have to tell you about that. They don't have a duty to tell you. But you can get that information on the Home Office update the system every couple of days. So there's a link. I'll ask Tulia to share that link so you can check on there. And that information is out. It's in the public domain. It's information that the Home Office publish. So it's for you to make sure that you are checking and you're aware, because there is no obligation on your employer to tell you that we're being investigated. They don't really have to, but it's good practice for them to. But the reason why they may not do it is it may cause a lot of panic, and it might just be a simple investigation and they know they can deal with it. They're dealing with their legal reps, and they're responding. So their focus is on responding and keeping that license. And then if they also have to deal with a staff force that is now very anxious, it may become too much for them. But when the license has been revoked, then they'll have to tell you because you no longer have the right to work for them. So yeah, so for suspension, you can always check on the list of sponsors. So I've answered that question. I think about what it means when it says that a sponsor license has been removed or expired. It means that either they've been suspended, either their license has been revoked, either they have not renewed their license. Before they had to apply for renewals. I know the Home Office recently said that all the licenses are valid for 10 years. So the employers do not have to apply so for a renewal of their license. So if it says it's been removed or expired, um, it's one of it's one of it's either been suspended. So when it's suspended, it's removed. It's either been revoked completely, or they have not renewed it. So it means either one of those things. And I would hope that employers would speak to their staff so that people know if a license has been revoked or not. Somebody's asked, how will a lack of hours or cut hours affect my application for indefinite leave to remain? So this is something that I'm saying to all new like people who have come here on recently in the health and care visas. 5 years is indefinite leave to remain, right? I think what we need to do as a people is get to that 5 years. And getting to that 5 years is not guaranteed. It's not a given that you will get there because anything can happen. So it's important for you to always have a job. And sometimes you if you've got no hours at all, of course your employer might not have the license because it can be taken away at any time. So the issue is I think we need to take one day at a time. This whole COS thing, as someone who works on a day-to-day basis in immigration, it is overwhelming. And sometimes you can feel like I want to get to indefinite. And I'm saying, no, let's just get through today because indefinite leave to remain is 5 years down the line. Let's take one step at a time and ensure that you are actually working and you actually have an employer and you actually have an employer who has a sponsorship license. Because right up to that 5 years, it's never something that can be guaranteed. And it's maintaining that bora pasi, let's just calm down and take one step at a time, one day at a time. So I know we can look to 5 years, but hey, this scheme has been there for 2 years and look at the havoc. So if a sponsor loses their license, if a sponsor dies, if they decide to go bankrupt, if they decide to stop, then it stops. We're not even getting to 3 years, let alone 5. So for now, it's really important for anyone who's working on a health and care visa or a butcher or construction or, there's so many sectors who are on these health and care visas and also skilled worker. So it's not just one set. There's also skilled workers. It is important to have a job where you're working, the hours that you're working, and it will affect you when you get to indefinite leave to remain. But if you're actually not doing the hours now, it means that your sponsor is in breach of their duties. So it may mean that the sponsor is not even going to get you to the 5 years. So the 5 years is not guaranteed. And I know that there was a lot of community tensions in our community. I've seen it where people who've lived here for 20 odd years, they're saying, hey, the road is not easy. I'm a lawyer, but even navigating this system for me and my family, it took us years to get our indefinite. You can have a curveball thrown at you when you don't even anticipate it. The law is always changing. The government changes, chops and changes, and immigration is a hot potato. So we have to be thankful when we get to that indefinite leave to remain, and we have to get there. That's the goal. But nothing is guaranteed, eh? Nothing is guaranteed at all. So it's really important to be aware of that and to take it one day at a time and to maintain those licenses. I think there's too much that happened and too much excitement that happened and so much reporting, so much like abuse by employers and sponsors, abuse of the system, abuse of the whole thing. So when that happens, it comes to light, the government is aware, they clamp down. And so they'll end up being casualties. And so I hope we get, people will get to that indefinite leave to remain, but it's not easy, and it's not an easy journey to get there, and it's not guaranteed. Yeah. Yes, thank you for answering that. No appeal means you cannot appeal. Thanks for that comment. Yes, so this is for sponsors, the 60-day. So there was a question about the 60-day letter. And then I think that comment is about where a sponsor license is revoked. Yes, there is no right of appeal. The only way you can challenge it is by judicial review or asking the Home Office to use their exceptional powers to reconsider the decision. And, there are things that you can do as a sponsor. However, you need to have clean hands. You need to know that you've been also doing the right things, and maybe it's just minor things like record, things that can be rectified. Then you can challenge it. So yeah. So that's okay. So yes, thank you so much, Tembi, who asked that question. We've got loads of questions here. Tembi asked the question, what happens if my 60 days lapse and I need to go back home, but I don't have air tickets for the whole family? Thank you for that question, because that's always an issue, isn't it? And that is a reality for some people, that you come and it's not working out. So you've got options. So as I said, that this webinar is geared towards workers rather than employers. So people who have limited leave to remain. But if there are employers, it can help you as you help your staff to navigate situations like this, where someone has received a letter from the Home Office saying you've got 60 days to stay in the country, or to leave the country, or to make another application, and your 60 days is coming up. And what do you do? What do you do? If you want to go back to your country of origin and you don't have air tickets for the whole family. So the Home Office have got a scheme for voluntary return. So where you decide that it hasn't worked out for me, I want to go back, you can get tickets for you and your family, and the Home Office can support you in your decision to go back. If you find that you are also homeless whilst you're waiting to go back, you can also get support and help to be able to prepare you to leave. So the voluntary returns is a team that works at the Home Office, and they're very their job is to get tickets for people who want to leave. So they will help you. They may give you some money as well to be able to just start. Not a lot, but they can make that journey easier for you. So it's something that is available. And when you make that decision, the only difficulty with taking those tickets from the Home Office is that you will not be able to come back. You'll be banned for a period of time. I think where you are assisted to go back, it's 10 years. I think 10 years. So the letters will state that for you, and they will explain that to you, that if you do decide you want to come back, you won't be able to come back. So you can also have another what can I say? You can also have another option where you go back by yourself, and then you regroup, and then you come back. So if your 60 days is coming up and you've got the funds, you can pay for yourself so that you leave your options open. But if you don't have the money, the letter from the Home Office that comes to people with the 60-day letters, I'm just looking at one now. It says the voluntary return service. They can be contacted for help and advice on returning home, and they can discuss the status of your case and the next steps in your departure from the UK. So they can provide you with practical support, providing access to a passport or emergency travel document, purchasing your flight ticket, help to rearrange complex return with reintegration support where you're eligible. So this is a government department, voluntary return service. The number is 0300 004 0202. And it's on the letters that come. So, you know, the letters that you get for that 60 days, this information is there. They can help you. So you have the option to leave voluntarily. And if you are removed, so they tell you in that letter as well that if you don't leave by yourself, then you can be removed. And it will be to Zimbabwe, to Malawi, to Nigeria, to Kenya, and they will have to enforce your removal. So you know these 60-day letters, when you receive them, they are saying that, okay, either you must tell us the reasons why you should stay by making a new application to stay. So the way you tell them that you want to stay is by making a new application. Or seek help and advice on returning home or return by yourself. Those are the three options that you have. If you then don't do that within the time that they've given you on that 60 days, there's a date there. They're not going to write to you again to say, we wrote to you that day, you know, what's going on. So it may then end up, you get another letter saying that they want you to start reporting because you are now living in the UK illegally. So if you continue to stay on after the 60 days and you're here illegally, what this means is that you can be detained. They might meet you when you're driving, and then they check. They can detain you. You can be removed forcibly when they detain you and they take you. You won't be allowed to work. And if you work illegally, your earnings can be seized and assets confiscated. So they can block your bank account if you continue to work illegally. So they'll have your bank accounts. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just telling you what is on the letter from the Home Office and what happens on a practical level, because this has been happening for years and years, and it's nothing new. It is what the Home Office does. They've put in place laws that allow them to take your money from your bank account, to freeze it. And they've put in place, when we talk about the harsh immigration system, and they actually enforced and enacted laws which allow them to do that. You won't be allowed to rent a house. You won't be allowed to claim any benefits. And your access to the NHS is also, you can be charged by the NHS for medical treatment. And your DVLA can prevent you from driving by taking away your UK license. So those are the things and the warnings that are written on the letter following the 60 days. So it's a warning, and this country can become very difficult when that 60-day period is over. So it's important to know your options. And I thank you for asking that question about voluntary return, because it's yeah. So it's a real problem. Hey, yeah. So let me see how many more questions. We were going to have this webinar for 1 hour. So I'll push it just for another maybe about 10 minutes, and I'll ask Tulia, my co-host, just check through the questions, and if we can lump some together, and then you can just text me summarized questions, because I can see there's loads of questions, and I would want to just answer these questions because I'm trying to combat misinformation. And there are quite a lot of there's a lot of misinformation, and it's in this day and age that we live in, anyone can record anything and give information which is not accurate. But the information that's verifiable is there, like on the gov.uk website. There's a lot of information which is credible. So whatever information you're getting, please ensure that it is credible, correct information, so that you're not then caused into problems. Yeah, so somebody said I paid too much money and it was paid in Zimbabwe. That was the instructions from the employer. Is this employer going to give the employee his or her money that they've paid? And it yeah, that's a very difficult thing, and a situation that many people find themselves in, that they were told that they had to pay money for whatever reason it was, a relocation package, and some people did not even get anything, no accommodation, no job, nothing. And so you can certainly try and claim that money back. However, it's sometimes that I think you would need to, what I would say is, try and get legal advice with regard to each situation and try and claim that money back. I think the difficulties that you have is that maybe it's proof, maybe it's the track record, maybe it's you so each case is different. And there's something that I wanted to just read about what the Home Office say, because there's some people who were complicit, isn't it? So there's some people where the Home Office have said, if we believe that the worker was knowingly involved, complicit. So I'm reading off the Home Office guidance because I don't like to say my own words. In the reasons for the revocation of the license. For example, if the worker agreed that you would arrange a non-existent job for them to enable them to come to the UK. So where someone paid money for a COS with no hours and they knew it, this is nothing new. So in the Home Office guidance, it's clear, it's there. It's a situation that they put examples, and they've said the action that we will take is we will normally cancel all of their remaining permission to leave, so they have none remaining. This means that they will leave the UK immediately or face enforced removal. So there's a thing where the Home Office say, if you entered into this agreement and you were complicit, you knew, they won't even give the 60-day letter. They will just cancel your leave to remain as well. And so you can claim your money back, but what were you paying for? Were you complicit? Are you the one who fueled this whole thing as well by being a willing participant in something that you knew was illegal? Is there that agreement that you reached? So that is something that the Home Office is aware of. It's nothing new, and they know. And so they will investigate like that as well. So when you make your claim for your money, so there's two distinct types of people. There might be some people who really genuinely paid for, they were told, we'll give you accommodation, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, and none of it was done. And also give you a job. Then those are victims, isn't it? And then they came here and find there's no job, there's no accommodation. That's then a victim of human trafficking, as well as it's a criminal offense in terms of what has happened. So there's distinctions in what has happened. And so it's important for you to know which category you fall in, and then report as according to who you are. So where there's been and I know that there has been arrests already made. I know that the police are investigating, and I know that there's a lot that is going on. in the different communities. There's gangs of human traffickers who use this system to exploit it, because there's people who, when people come here on a boat, um and they come here on a boat and they've paid tens of thousands. They're trafficked here and they're brought here and they pay a lot of money. But those gangs, there is an article that came out recently. They were arrested, sentenced to imprisonment. So it's the same principle, that where you've been bringing people on planes instead of bringing people on a boat, you're still the same in that you've trafficked people into the UK under a false pretense, and you've given false information to say you're going to come here to work, but there's no job, and you've just brought them in. Or even if they were buying and they knew, the person who sold has also been committing a criminal offense. So immigration offenses, criminal offenses, they're mixed and intertangled in together. And so they can be a lot of different things. So sometimes I remember people commenting and saying, why is it that they're just getting, the sponsor doesn't suffer because they just get their license revoked? But what happens, and what's written in the guidance by the Home Office, is we'll firstly investigate the compliance. But if in doing that, we pick up any other offenses, so they may pick up offenses in terms of money laundering, offenses in terms of trafficking, modern day slavery, they then refer those to the different departments. So they refer to the HMRC, they refer to the police, so that's how it happens, that they don't just do everything at once, but they're very systematic, in their investigations and what they do. So I know that, people will be crying, with the money they've lost and things like this. So I would always say to people, advise you just to get advice and see how you can get helped on an individual basis, than for me to say a blanket thing. And it's not as simple as, if you bought something, then you're guilty, because usually there is a person who is in a position of power, and then there's a person who is in a position of vulnerability, and there's a person who is a victim. So it's not simple. It's not a simple and straightforward thing. So it's just important to be aware of that. So yeah. Yeah, okay. So I am looking to see if I've got any generic questions, but we will save the questions that we've got if we haven't been able to get to them. There are lots of questions, and unfortunately, I won't be able to get through all of them as much as I would have liked to. I won't be able to get through of them. Good. Thank you for the people who are also answering questions. This one was not about dependence, and we'll cover the issue of the dependence. So the last one I'm going to answer is this one. I hope I've answered it. That, Rumbi, what about if my visa is expiring in 2025, but at the moment it's suspended? Should people worry? I think I've covered this, yeah? So I think I have covered it. Yeah. Also, that's good. I like that question, where you've received a letter where they said that your leave to remain stays valid. So thank you for answering those questions as well. That it may be because they want you to keep working, because if they say all the workers have to stop working today, it can bring a real crisis in the sector. So it's very important. So sometimes the Home Office will say that you can carry on working, and they can make arrangements with the sponsor as well to say your staff can carry on working, because they don't want a crisis where there's no one to care for the elderly until to give them time to recruit new staff and things like that, because it can leave a whole crisis in the sector. So that is a very important. So in summarizing, what can you do? We are going to start a free drop-in legal advice session on the 8th of February in Coventry at the Methodist Central Hall. And those details will be coming out on all our socials, because there's so much demand for services and we cannot, we're trying to build up our capacity to be able to help people, not just with legal advice, but even switching, even accessing other services, because there's complex and myriad of issues. Currently, we've been able to offer free advice on a Tuesday, but we know that it's booked right up until the end. And we're so happy that there are quite a lot of lawyers in the community who are willing to give out free advice, and we are going to be able to signpost people to them as well. They can do for limited period of time, because as you know, everyone has to work to eat and to survive, so they can't just be giving out free advice. So they can, but for limited periods of time. So we'll be sharing out that information from the other lawyers from the Zimbabwean community and even outside of the Zimbabwean community. We're just reaching out to try and be able for people to get advice that they need, because we are, as an organization, we're small and we're overwhelmed. So we do paid consultations and free work. So we try and balance the two. But we can't help everyone. And we have to pay our bills. So we rely on different streams of income. So people will say, oh, why do we have to pay? You do have to pay for some of the service. If you want quick service, if you want today, you want advice, sometimes you're going to have to pay for it. But if you want free advice, you're going to have to wait for it. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, Rumbi, I need advice today. And I'll say, there's a link here. And you say, I don't want to pay. Then I'll say, here's another link. It's free. I don't want to wait. You have to choose. So you can't have everything that you want. So those are the services that we provide. Even like today, this is a free service. We're providing advice for people, giving clarity and bringing about clarity where there is misinformation, where there's doubt and fear. And so it's important to have that. If you want to volunteer to work with us, please come onto our website and register. We need to have all hands on deck. I think one of the things I'm crying out to and speaking to everyone in our community, those of us who came 20 years ago and all of that, that you guys, we've got to work together and help each other as a community. We've got to try and ride this through and come out stronger. It's not a time to be divided. If the sponsors fall, the carers fall. You know, if we win, we win together. If the sponsor is equipped and doing things well, the workforce is happy. If the sponsor is not doing well and abusing the workers, it's not good. So everyone has to do their part, and it's a time for us to come together. If you are an employer and you've got vacancies, please reach out to us and we can send so many people to you, especially those who've got their 60 days coming up. It's a time for us to unite and to work together and try and help those who are vulnerable, who have come after us. I always say I came here in a long time ago, late 90s, and we are able to help people and use our experiences to help the next person, the new wave of people who have come now. And it's important for us to have that in our communities, to have that unity and that spirit to work together. And it's a difficult thing because there's not a lot of trust, there's not a lot of cohesion. We have got barriers to working together. A lot of us have been hurt and disappointed and had your fingers burnt by trying to work together. But we have to. There's no way that we can work apart. And we're not enemies. I think we're working together to try and bring a solution to this problem, which I see getting worse and worse and worse in 2024. So if you would like to volunteer with us, if you'd like to partner with us, if you'd like to support us, please do. And you can also join one of our community groups for updates, job links, peer support. You know, we just started these WhatsApp groups and said, let's try and get information to people. Let's try and see people need switches. Let's help. And the groups have grown now to so many, and people are helping each other. and providing links where there's jobs, providing help to each other. So thank you so much. And thank you, Blessing, for that. Your willingness to help. There's so much that you can do to help, even remotely. So that is so welcome, and we if you can register on our website so that we can try and join you on board, and also to do all the checks on volunteers and things like that. And yes, we are starting with that as well, partner, just for employers to get, we're trying to come up with a program where employers can get bite-sized chunks of webinars and information, because we want the employers to succeed. Because for the employers to succeed, the workers are safe. So we are together in this as a community. And I see people celebrating when they hear, oh, this one lost the license. There's nothing to celebrate, guys, because the people are going to fall into problems because of that. So we shouldn't celebrate. We need to change that. And it's on all sides. So thank you. I didn't manage to do anything on the fee waivers and how to extend that. We know when your 60 days is coming up, and say you've got a job offer, or your visa is expiring and your employer's license is suspended. So if you are a person who's in that situation, quickly before I go, the reason why I said apply for a fee waiver and then fill in a form called FLRHO and ask the Home Office that, can I extend my leave so that this investigation from my sponsor can finish, because they're willing to sponsor me, but my leave to remain is expiring. My visa is expiring next week. I can't get a new COS. I don't have a new job offer, and I need to be able to continue to live and work and wait for the decision for my sponsor or look for another job. So that is a suspensive, it's not an application that will succeed on its own. It's you making sure that your leave to remain doesn't expire. So the Home Office, in those 60-day letters, they say, tell us why you should stay here. So you're saying to them, I want to stay because I've got a job offer, but my employer is waiting for new COSs from the Home Office. There is a delay. Please just give me time. So if you make that application and it's a valid application, then you are allowed to stay. You're no longer falling into that illegal phase where they say you are now living here illegally. So that is why it's important to secure your visa. So that, what I said, I wrote it on my Facebook about that, you can apply for a fee waiver, because the application itself, it costs almost, with the new fees coming up on the 6th of February, it will be about 3,500 pounds to extend. So including the immigration health surcharge and the Home Office fees. But if you apply for a fee waiver, the fee waiver, it enables you to not to pay, and then to make that application for an extension, which means that your current conditions that you have continue to run. So if you're an employer and your staff, you've got a suspension and your staff's visas are coming up, you can do that for them. You can help them with that so that they can also continue to work for you. Because if you make that application before the visa expires, then their current leave and the conditions continue to be valid. So maybe I will do another webinar on that. But when we do our drop-ins, those are some of the things that we'll be doing, is helping people to fill in those forms, because it's not simple. So on the 8th of February is our first one. We'll be helping people to fill in those forms so that they can, because we can't do that every day, but we can help people, and maybe we'll do like a video or something with information. I'll just find out from the team what we can do so that it's clear and it's easy and people understand it's not a visa, but it's an extension. So yes, so thank you everyone for joining, and I think that's great. You've got the information or what you can do, and what is going forward. We have recorded this with this Zoom meeting, and we will share it. So thank you everyone for coming on this morning. At least today we were able to fit everyone in. Last time we didn't have enough space for everyone. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And be blessed. Yeah, we've gone on